This week, I spoke to Gregg Wallace from Building Ventures and Matt Wegworth from McKinstry about the investment going into Contech. I was thrilled to have the opportunity to speak to Gregg and Matt on the podcast, where they helped me deliver some of the key insights around the latest technologies in a sector of many sectors. As Gregg shared the analogy, construction is like a Russian doll, or an onion. You peel off one layer, and then there's another and another. Now, my main takeaway from this episode centers around how much investment there's been in the last few years, and a further increase in investment expected, especially around seed and Series A, which is great news to see more investment going in. You should tune into the episode to hear more about how to cultivate innovation within a construction and real estate business, lessons of change management, the importance of partners in this space, and to hear about some Contech success stories like Overcast, Innovations, and Canera. Thanks for tuning in and enjoy.
This is the Propcast, and I'm Louisa Dickins. Before we introduce our guest, here's a quick word from our sponsor.
Hey, it's Michael Beckerman, the CEO of Contech. We are the largest conference and media company devoted to the PropTech industry. Real excited to announce our 2023 schedule. First stop is the magazine in London, May 10th and 11th, followed by the Javits Center in New York City, September 19th to the 21st. We'll also be staging a dedicated climate event in Europe, coming on the heels of our hugely successful Copenhagen event that we staged last year. For more information, please visit pretech.com. We hope to see you at one of our conferences in 2023.
On this episode of the Contech season, we are going to be hearing from our incredible guest from the venture side, and we're joined by Gregg Wallace, principal on the investing team at Building Ventures, and Matt Wegworth, who leads Dawson Ventures at McKinstry's corporate venture practice. So welcome to the show, Gregg and Matt.
It's great to be on here, Lou.
Morning, Lou. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you both on. Today, we're going to be looking at the changing landscape of Contech investment. Now, those listening in, obviously, thank you so much for listening in, but I'm sure you've heard of some construction technologies, like some maybe the new generation Contechs. We've got Icon, Buildart, OpenSpace, Alice Technologies, the Procore, who have all raised a huge amount, allowing their products to grow globally. I say new generation as I classify the likes of, say, Trimble, Autodesk, and so forth as first generation. But it's not just Contech that we're going to be discussing. Another buzzword, and there's plenty of them floating about, is called green Contech. And this is a stat I read this morning, by the way. So I read that in 2022, global investment into green construction technologies was at 2.2 billion. AO Proptech's low carbon future report attributed the growth to legislation, technological innovation, and basically it's ushered greener building practices into the mainstream. So more than 4.5 billion of early stage capital was invested in companies directly focusing on decarbonising the architecture, engineering, and green construction sectors. So between 2017 and 2022, that's more than 452 deals, which is a hell of a lot more than what we saw previously. This is just a report I recently ran. We've got our guests who are the specialists in obviously venture in this space. They're going to be sharing with us today about obviously how they got into it. We've got Matt, who's got sort of 25 years experience in the AEC industry. We've got obviously Gregg, who's come from obviously Hilti, and now working obviously at Building Ventures. And they're going to be sharing why we've seen more investment. They're going to be sharing with us sort of how they can see this investment and this new technology driving us towards a low carbon future and driving more value into the industry, which is famously low margins. Now, it's clear Matt and Gregg are big advocates for innovation. Obviously, you know I am, and I presume those listening in today are too. But for founders who are looking basically at different ways to get their technologies into construction, those who are looking to see further adoption, now, Matt does this for a living. He drives this culture for innovation. So hopefully he'll be sharing with us, what we can do more to try and digitalize probably the slowest industry to digitalize. Which, I mean, this industry probably has arguably the biggest opportunity when it comes down to ESG, housing affordability, and much, much more. So I'm super pumped, and it sounds so American because I'm so British as saying that for this podcast. And then I think hopefully we'll finish off with our guest sharing maybe some products to look out for or what to expect in the future of sort of VC contact. So now I've given you an uber long introduction. Gregg, why don't you start us off? Like, share with the audience who may not be familiar with you, how you got into this space, and obviously a bit more about Building Ventures as well. That'd be fab.
Great. Thanks, Lou. So I'm based in Northern California. I'm on the Building Ventures team. We're 7 venture capitalists. There are now 3 of us on the West Coast. We announced our latest team member, Myra, joining us from Stanley X last week, just went live. I'm very happy about that. And I first met the Building Ventures team in mid 2018. So I had just moved to California with Hilti. I had been part of Hilti Group for 6 years in Europe, working in strategy, product management, and running marketing in Spain. And Hilti Group, similar to other multinationals, were becoming increasingly aware of the degree of startup led innovation. And while there wasn't necessarily the easiest way to engage with that community, since, as you know, it's a global community, it's coming from universities, it's coming from founders, it's coming from established technology companies. But the group realized that there needed to be a single face or single point of contact for early stage startups to reach out to Hilti Group and engage, share their vision, share how they might like to collaborate, and for us to also represent the group and the huge capabilities that go on when you have $400 million of R&D spend per year. So working with another business partner, Vivian Hegde, we set up a tech office in California. That was mid 2018. I was new to this sector, so I hadn't heard of the leading players who are building and operating the facilities in the US, since my Hilti career had been in the US. And so part of getting closer plugged into the startup ecosystem, and you're hosting many of the interesting players in that ecosystem, part of us plugging in as Hilti was to make an investment into Building Ventures, as well as another construction tech VC. And that way we could get a little bit closer to that network. We could understand, who are the different startups. I compare startups a bit like soccer football clubs for your friends in Europe. You have backyard neighborhood leagues of people doing this almost as a lifestyle, all the way up through the Premier League with Real Madrid. And that's a very serious play. And so discerning a little bit, where is their signal versus where is their noise, has to be done as part of an ecosystem. And we really appreciated as Hilti the ecosystem that Building Ventures brought. So we made an investment in mid 2018 alongside a whole other number of strategic investors as part of Building Ventures' first fund, which launched in 2018 as 53 million and placed 16 startup portfolio companies, which ran through the middle of last year. So that portfolio is complete. There's 16 teams. One of these exited that's another story we can get into. So where are we now? So we just launched Fund 2. We went live with that this summer. We're very excited to bring on a range of other strategic partners. I joined in the beginning of 2021 as we were getting plans underway for Fund 2. What we saw in the market, you shared some market statistics. We saw the market growing about double every 2 years. And so as part of that ongoing market growth with all the volume of startups that we see, we needed 2 things. We needed more capital to be able to invest and take advantage of these opportunities. And then we also wanted a broader strategic network of investors and partners like McKinstry. And why is that? We each come at this with a different background to the sector, but this is a sector of many sectors, as you know well. I compare it almost to Russian doll. There's more and more layers of technical complexity as you kind of peel the onion, and therefore part of our business model as Building Ventures is to keep surrounded by a very close strategic network. And as you invited me for the podcast today, I couldn't think of a better partner to have on than Matt Wegworth, also representing McKinstry, because I think as your listeners will find out, they're really spanning that whole building life cycle. And that's what we also represent as Building Ventures, looking how do we create a fundamentally better built world, not the transaction side of buying and selling and dividing buildings into crypto coins, but really creating a fundamentally better built world, connecting the historically disparate phases of the building life cycle. And we met McKinstry. We realized we had a bit of a meeting of the minds, and I think we'll hear more from Matt about why that was.
Well, what a tee up, Matt. Over to you. You've obviously, I shared with the audience, you've got 25 years in sort of AEC. Talk us through, a bit more about Dawson Ventures and hopefully you can repay a compliment to Greg too.
Absolutely. Yeah, no setup. That was a wonderful setup. So thank you. Let me see. So, good morning. I started my career, I'm just getting old, right? So 25 plus years ago, really, started in the building automation controls industry, working for one of the large firms back then. And when I got into the industry, we were applying technology to help automate buildings that were either manually operated or maybe some sort of glorified time clock. So the power of applying technologies and systems to really help innovate the way buildings operate, towards a more efficient and sustainable operations is kind of where I got my start and sort of earned my, keep, so to speak. And that was really formative for me in just the power of just coming at problems differently and applying technology to really help, make for a more efficient, sustainable operation. That segued to McKinstry, which is where I work now, which is the same strategy and approach, but more broader. And so for context, so McKinstry is a full service design, build, operate, and maintain company. So we get a lot of opportunity to work with clients. And so our tagline is for the life of your building. And that's true. We get involved early in the design and development of buildings, certainly through the construction and then the ongoing operations and maintenance. I think that what that does for us here, and certainly for our clients, is really brings kind of a suite of thinkings and offerings to really drive that desire to how do we kind of remove through innovation the waste and climate harm out of the environment. So that has 60 years of operation. We think of ourselves as being innovative. I will tell you, we have not always been most efficient with innovation at McKinstry. That created which is what I am responsible for, which is called Dawson Ventures, and that is really our innovation practice, innovation studio here at McKinstry. Though we have got a lot of innovation coming at us through a number of the different vendors we work with and designs we're creating and construction applications. We weren't doing a very good job about 5 years ago. We realized, hey, there's a lot coming at us that's not slowing down to everything that Greg had mentioned. There's a couple of crises we're having to contend with as internationally is around environment, and the energy transition and just affordability and equity, and and so how can we do a better job at really if part of our mission is to innovate this and create this, be the leader in transformation best we can around innovating around efficiency and alike. So how do we do that better? So that we stood up Dawson Ventures as that place where we can help cultivate an ecosystem innovation at McKinstry, really working to help solve real world problems for our own teams. And so we provide that sort of air to breathe to advance our current lines of business around innovation, how to apply innovation, whether it be products, processes, business models, partnerships, M&A. How do we do a better job of that to really help accelerate and keep pace with the innovation that we're seeing that our clients are asking for, as much as what the industry's lead. We didn't want to get caught, and we're feeling like if we don't get real purposeful about this, we could be in a position where we were reacting and not necessarily helping our clients from the beginning. So that's sort of a long answer.
And for I guess for our audience listening in, we have some founders listening in. I think obviously we're going into choppier 2023. I'm sure people might be looking, well, those who haven't raised yet will still be looking to raise, I'm sure, or they will be putting off. Greg, can you share with the audience what sort of ticket sizes Building Ventures looks at? And Matt, I guess on Dawson's, what sort of stage and ticket sizes you look at too?
Sure, glad to do that. So Building Ventures looks to invest. We have a stage we like to call sapling between seed and A rounds, where there's enough proof points to start to see some product market fit starting to evolve. And we like to believe by keeping really close to the industry, we can be very supportive at the early seed stage, getting to know founders, making introductions, kind of helping them think through strategically the problems. We can't do that with every startup, but there's a bit of a short list where we try to deliberately invest more time. And then by being involved with time, not capital, we can start to see some of the teams that are gathering momentum. And then ahead of an A round, maybe a mature seed round with $1 to $2.5 million kind of going in at a valuation anywhere between, let's say, 15 and 30 million, having an entry point where we can then own 5 or 10% of the company and then follow that company through its full life cycle. We want to support through, with Dandelion and Measurable, we're up into 4th and 5th rounds, continuing to support the entrepreneurs along their journey. This is not a one-time transaction. This is the start of a 5 to 10-year relationship through all of its ups and downs.
Until they exit, which you obviously mentioned one of your investments did. Are you allowed to share with us who that was?
Yeah, the last one that exited was, there's two. One that exited was from Fund One was Assemble Systems, and they exited to Autodesk as a way of collaborating in the cloud-based design, and how do we bring together those different elements in a cloud-based architecture. Another exit, which I think has now gone live. I think I saw it on the Oracle website. So New Metrics, formerly known as SmartVid.io, has now become part of Oracle, working to advance the frontiers of early warning systems of safety and looking at the predictive indicators that show that job sites may need to take a second look at their safety program.
Yeah. Greg, and also Matt, I'm sure you might have this as well. You've obviously invested in various products, been pitched by various products. Being able to summarize exactly what they do, being quite specific and, in a few words, credit when credit's due. It's very hard to remember what every product is. Now I'm going to pick up on a few things you sort of said in terms of, M&A going forward in terms of investment. You mentioned obviously about the acquisitions and the exit. But before we do that, Matt, what do you want to share with the audience about what sort of, maybe a bit of some of your investments or ventures that you focus around?
Yeah, absolutely. Dawson Ventures has got sort of its portfolio of companies we're investing in. Certainly, Building Ventures is part of that. That's and the network that brings is just really phenomenal. A purview into what's happening. Again, we only have the span of folks that Building Ventures is talking to is greater than none that we're seeing. So we get this benefit of sort of that first pass with those folks, and they get the ability to kind of when available, meet with those folks and learn more. Having said that, we kind of come at it two different ways. One is we have our direct investments in startups, and we have within our portfolio our own startups, whether we've done it as wholly owned subsidiaries of McKinstry and or in partnerships with others. So we have that investment really around the trends for which we're following as we look at the built environment. Things that we're seeing are not just secular trends, but the ones that are really that we think are sort of our guideposts for where we're focused around innovation. So we have those, and those kind of what is kind of our mindset and how we direct our investment in the built environment. Things that we think as there's just sort of this change world of work happening. There's certainly supply chain disruption, more resiliency, smart and autonomous buildings is another one we follow. Zero carbon buildings is one we're passionate about, and sort of this idea of shared energy communities. So against those, that's a backdrop of the trends that we follow that kind of aligns around our business needs, those trends, and then where do we see the application of our funding. So every year we set aside money for the innovation for our own startups, and they come in sort of incubate and acceleration depending on where they're at in their stage. So that's kind of the way we come at it. And then of course looking and partnering with firms like Building Ventures to really get more access to not only the network they've set up, but also the firms they're talking with. So we're, again, always staying aligned around our kind of guideposts, things that we might want to invest in.
Amazing. It's a big question looking at sort of trends and I guess forecasts. We mentioned about obviously some M&As and exits, which we've all heard about, say this year and in the last few years. So going forward in 2023, I think we're going to see a lot more sort of M&A. More of the larger businesses buying up some good products at hopefully, well, not I say hopefully, for them, hopefully a lower valuation than what they've had in the past sort of 2 years. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what to expect in terms of investment there, but also in terms of like new trends as well in the market. Matt, you mentioned about sort of zero carbon buildings. Yeah. Anything you can share with me and the audience, that'd be perfect. Greg, maybe you can go first.
Yeah, Lou, we had our investor event in Boston last month, and one of the headlines we shared as a team was that amidst, you read the Financial Times and Wall Street Journal, it feels like tech's in a downturn, and certainly valuation at public market levels and at teams, let's say at Series B and later, have dropped in many cases by over 50%, and that hurts, especially for established teams that have large number of staff, and they're looking at how do we trim our cash burn. We need to reduce staff. We need to look at profitable growth, not just growth. At the earlier stage, at seed, and A levels, we are seeing an unprecedented level of startup activity in our numbers as we kind of cut across construction tech, real estate tech, and then we do track the transactions tech. We're seeing in all three of those segments that there's going to be more deals and dollars invested, both in US teams as well as international teams at seed and A during 2022 than 2020 and 21, which was a record year. So what's the outlook going into 2023? I agree with your point, what you were highlighting. Corporates are looking at some of the valuations that have been dented and saying, okay, now that some of these teams are mature, have been around 5 to 7 years, I think some of the corporates will be opportunistic about snapping up some of the teams. There have been a few areas like reality capture where, we're in the kind of 6th or 7th inning of some of the laps of that first wave of teams that brought that Google Street View functionality to the job site. And we've seen a number of acquisitions. I think that will continue in a few other segments as well in 2023.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Matt, what have you seen? And, if you don't want to go sort of too much into, say, sort of invest in M&A, any more details you can share on sort of trends, more like a holistic point of view, I'm sure, I know I would love to hear it.
Yeah, well, we're, from our vantage point, we are certainly on the receiving end of a lot of, technologies and products that are, for us, is, they're viable, right? They're at least minimally viable at best or at worst, where we would want to apply them on projects. Maybe to start with, we are certainly seeing and anticipating no slowdown there at all. I mean, matter of fact, we are between Dawson Ventures and our different lines of business are continually, whether it be new startups and or existing vendors and or product manufacturers with just new strategies and solutions to drive towards, and I would just say it's resiliency, whether it's on energy efficiency, sustainability, it's that resiliency piece that I think for us is really becoming really important for our clients and for our own teams. So do we see a slowdown? Not at all. Are we continuing to invest in our own startups? Absolutely. And what around partnerships and M&A for us, we are probably more interested in strategics. How can we take with our kind of ventures, how do we take them to evolve them and then accelerate through partnership? And that, that the pace of that has really picked up for us in the last couple of years. It's just interested parties in trying to make sure in adjacent industries, not even within our own industries, but how do we advance the cause? So I guess we're seeing is no slowdown. As a matter of fact, the pace is picking up. It's just really picking against the trends I mentioned earlier, the ones that we think are going to benefit not just McKinstry, but our clients.
Awesome. I'm loving this. This is obviously it's morning for you, it's evening for me. I love a bit of positivity around the market at the end of the day. Now, to obviously great to hear about more sort of deals going on, more investment. Now, that's great that happens. We also need to talk about how can we cultivate more innovation. We want to see more adoption. Obviously, Gregg, you were Hilti, champion this space. You mentioned obviously Vivin earlier. You guys are doing it together. You set up the venture arm. We actually have Vivin coming on with from Zakura and Antonia, who is still at Hilti, joining on another episode of this podcast, which I'm super excited for. But from you guys, how can founders or say business development salespeople listening in, what do they need to do to sort of encourage and more sort of innovation and adoption in this industry? Because that's what needs to happen. Is it a certain way of sort of pitching their product? Is there maybe a massive gap in the market where for someone to maybe pivot that product slightly? I don't know. Do you want to go first, Gregg?
Sure. I think every team would love to have the magic bullets. Adoption in this industry is really, really hard. And if we had to pick two generic startups, one with incredible technology and one with an incredible go-to-market motion, we take the go-to-market, and we think that is actually the harder piece for construction tech and prop tech. We don't need to come invent core technologies just for this sector. We can take the spillovers from manufacturing and logistics and automotive. What we need is teams who have a good understanding of getting to market. That is one area, as you talk to Antonia and Vivin, Hilti is a master in go-to-market. 2/3 of its employees are direct sales and focused on going to market, visiting 8 or 10 job sites or offices every day. So within the sector, one area, Lou, where I often try to highlight is that this ENR 400, the largest general contractors, if we just take a look at the US, I'm sure it's fairly similar in other countries as well. those top 400 firms represent only 25 to 30% of construction volume put in place in the US. That means that the next 10,000 contractors are doing around 60% of construction volume, 60, 70%. So how do we then approach smaller organizations that are local, 1 to 3 cities, have no CIO on board? This almost starts to look like a consumer, like go to market. A number of SaaS firms popularize this idea of product-led growth. Can the product, from the moment that you open it and log in, start to explain itself? Can it start to offer where are the upsell opportunities? Every consumer is familiar with TurboTax. The basic version's free, but then your needs change and it unlocks a new frontier in the product, and you progressively advance in the product. And there's nobody from TurboTax coming to your front door and walking you through the process. It's a very, very good UI UX experience that explains itself. And I think one tactic I would put forward is that teams should be thoughtful to not only have someone who's experienced in going and speaking the language of construction and contractors and property managers, but additionally, maybe they come from one of these really cool fintech plays where the valuations got way overheated, but they're really good at generating that type of adoption and being self-explanatory in a really nice UI UX type environment. So that's one area where we've seen a few founders, is a really cool team with those type of backgrounds, and we'd love to see that, because it is a hard market to go to market where there hasn't historically been, enormous purchasing departments in the IT group and software group who are sophisticated enough to have product managers to deploy those tools inside the company and make it all the way out to the job site trailer. That's too much to expect of the industry, which historically hasn't had to have those roles staffed up.
Yeah, well, look, as obviously speaking from LMRE, we're doing a lot more work with some incredible clients in the construction technology space, and our clients want people who come from construction, also scaled a business and got them to post IPO. Obviously, as we know, there's not many businesses out there like that. So finding that person who wants to go to an earlier stage business or take the risk is pretty difficult. Now they are out there and we can do it. It just, that person comes at a price, unfortunately. Their salaries are crazy. But that's really interesting, the point you sort of made there as well. And yeah, I mean, at least in the US, you guys about 5 years ahead of the UK and Northern Europe, way ahead of sort of APAC. So for the Contech businesses who have sort of scaled, gone, to Europe and then to APAC, it gets even harder to find those people to help really grow their business. But I was just typing out some of the points you just made there.
You and your firm are at the forefront of seeing that and leading that. How do you attract talent into these teams and industries where people from the tech world haven't really thought of deploying their skills?
Yeah, well, this is actually, we're going to talk about this in a podcast later when I have Antonio and Vivian, and I spoke about at the Built Worlds conference. Shout out to the team there. Back in September, but it's all talking about how can you attract people, the diversity issue. Construction's predominantly sort of obviously stereotyped as being slow and archaic, very sort of male dominated. There's now over 1 million women in construction. That's great, but what about construction technology? So well, how can you make it more appealing? How can you talk about all this investment going in, all the opportunity there is, and then obviously talking about how can it help the world, these corporates, these businesses hit net zero. So that's all about sort of we won't get there without cultivating innovation in these businesses, which Matt, what have you seen as well? This is what you're permanently sort of champion, what can be done, and how, I guess, within your business as well, is there, I'd love to hear a bit more about is this innovation high on people's agendas? Do people recognize that sort of this innovation is also tied to sort of the ESG and can help facilitate hitting these targets as well? Because it's all interlinked, isn't it?
Absolutely. So we come at this problem statement as both on behalf of our business, or part of our business as a solutions provider, the Dawson Ventures portfolio and entities. And then we're also a customer, because McKinstry actually employs some of this technology. We would like, not just for our own entities, but for the industry, to employ some of this innovative technology on projects, right? To really drive to the things you're talking about, the need, productivity, affordability, equity, whatever. The list goes on. But, it has been a lesson in change management. I will tell you that. Contracts that often discourage innovation because it's untested, right? So some of our, and half of our business, what we're rewarding people to do is remove risk, deliver the project on time, on budget, some money, hopefully, and the other time we're saying, hey, imply more of this innovation because we think it could really carry the industry and make for a better end game. So we have this internal battle. I would just say for us, for McKinstry, and we're certainly employing these kind of tactics with Dawson Ventures as we're out beyond McKinstry, selling to others in the industry. It certainly starts with the executive and leadership team, right? What are we doing around innovation as a part of our strategic growth trajectory? Not just the theme, not just what we're trying to accomplish, but what's the actual, if we're going to hit this growth, what part of that growth has to do with innovation, whether it be a product, process, M&A, whatever, and defining it and then cascading that down to the different business units, lines of business, so that it becomes not just the mission for the company, but for individual businesses. That's probably the easy part. The other part, the harder part, is back to change management, is finding your partners, your champions on the other end of those lines of business that are, going to help you carry that forward, right? You have to have someone that's not just experienced, but somewhat respected in that line of business, that has eager to help solve real problems. So pragmatic problems that have where a solution be real valuable, like sort of what's holding you back. So we twice a year meet with our different lines of business leaders and try to solve, understand and prioritize what those business needs are. So when we're bringing innovation to them, whether it be internal or external, we're addressing the need. For us, that, along with a good champion on the other side, addressing real needs pragmatically with good data and reporting, and then communicating that out to the broader McKinstry so that everybody can see and understand what the impact was from applying a technology around the design, the construction, the operations and maintenance, what have you. And that begets, and what we're starting to see is not just culture of innovation, it kind of builds on itself. And then you start to see your standard operating procedures change. Some of this technology and process approach becomes just a part of how we do business. It has been a decade activity here, and it continues. The work's never done, but it is a culture change for sure. And it's been fun, but it's worked every day, whether we're outside of McKinstry or inside McKinstry. It's been fun, when you sit around with a group of folks and you're trying to tackle a problem. Hey, what's going on in the industry? What kind of interesting solutions or products are out there that can start applying, and then start to test them? And that's been fun. And it builds on itself. So that's a long answer, but that's kind of how we're coming at it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. I am conscious of time, so we're going to finish on the LMRE part. We're going to take it in turns. We'll do, say, Greg, you can start off with some lessons learned, and then Matt will go to you. If you guys are okay, we'll just sort of get started with that. So, okay, Greg, if you will share with us, the audience, what's the main lesson you've learned throughout your career?
How long do we have? This is a good question. Lou, I'd say after 2 decades in the professional world, I'd say first principles matter more. I think teams and people and projects and leaders will, and there's a cultural aspect to this, but can tend to rush in towards the preferred answer or preferred outcome too quickly. And first principles really matter. Who's the team that you're surrounded by, and what are the principles and values, and really being a little bit more patient and deliberate to map out the approach and who's around the table and what are the interests and stakes in the matter. Doing that carefully and deliberately and establishing a common set of principles, even before defining the project objectives, I think really matters. And so there's a saying, and I think your German-speaking audience will know it well, is sometimes you need to go a lot slower to go faster. And I think that has been one of my key lessons.
Awesome. Thank you for that. That was a very considered answer to that. And you can definitely tell you've had a bit of time into the consultancy, but I echo everything you said. And I think going into 2023, a lot of people will be sort of looking, what team do we have around us who was super important and integral to, getting through sort of recession or whatever it may be. Sorry that I said the R word. And it's making sure those values are ingrained and, rethinking, every decision rather than sort of rushing to grow. Right, Matt, is there anyone, this is the end part, you'd like to give a shout out to, or it could be a product, it could be obviously So we've already mentioned Building Ventures, but another one of your partners, or you could talk about a tech product.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, every day we're always amazed by what's happening out in the industry, particularly around construction technology. We have one of our ventures, within the Dawson Ventures portfolio. It's called Overcast Innovations. I have really been impressed with what they've been doing over the last few years to really help innovate around how you deliver projects more efficiently. And in essence, it's really about how do you, with an industrial construction sort of approach and manufacturing mindset, how do you remove a very pragmatic approach to how you just remove waste on a job site. And for this team, it's really, if you look above your ceiling in a particular commercial office building, there are probably 15 or more building systems that are handling mechanical HVAC, lighting, all the myriad of low voltage devices, wireless access points, fire alarm, fire sprinkler, all these devices that you need to have, both for code, to create a safe environment and a comfortable environment and an informative environment. But each one of those systems has a separate design, contractor, installation, commissioning. What could we do to deliver that back to this idea of zero energy, zero carbon, and a zero premium? How can we come at the problem a bit differently, in partnership with the AEC community to design it, build it offsite, and show up with a plug and play, ready to connect, finished product that meets the intent of the design, but does it in a way that just drives out a waste on the job site? So that Overcast Innovations team has just done a fantastic job, and now we're partnering with some larger firms that have a real long time history in the ceiling space. It's been a fun journey and seeing how that product and the technology allows it to happen on a job site, and then watching our general contracting partners see the direct benefit in terms of I was able to install those same systems in 20% of the time at 30% of the cost. That has been a fun, and seeing it from the beginning back to incubation and now acceleration has been really fun. There is a ton of great technology and solutions out there. I picked that one selfishly because I get to live with it every day.
I love it. But that's how you generate a culture of innovation, a successful product that's proven its sort of value. And then you mentioned about having those champions in the business, getting people sort of talking about it, the first follower approach. We mentioned about change management earlier. I've just done that with my business for the whole of 2022. We went for a bit of a storming period we got through, but it's so important to have that within the business. The final two are, what has been the most rewarding part of working within the construction technology industry? Greg, this one's for you.
All right, Lou, I'm going to build on Matt's example with Overcast. I think he's being even humble about it. So you're going to have to bear with me. I'm going to tie together a few pieces. The common complaint about the industry is that all of the partners need to work together. So I'm going to illustrate really quickly how I got in touch with McKinstry and how Overcast is going to make life better for all of us who are using co-working facilities. So I met McKinstry because at Hilti, McKinstry was known as a top West Coast innovator. Like, this company is always going to be working at the edge of innovation. And in the process of getting to know McKinstry, Matt introduced me to what his team was building in Seattle at their site with Overcast. So fabrication facility into the logistics area, into the showroom area, where you have this consolidated lighting and HVAC and electrical in these kind of beautiful open exposed ceiling areas where the airflow is actually adaptive and wants to react to the people who are then in that office space and area. And so there is a gentleman named Larry Hillman with Convergent, first construction tech conference I went to in California, who told the story of a flagship skyscraper in San Francisco, I won't name which one, where while he was at Siemens, he was begging them, please consolidate all of these systems. You're going to save so much money versus having each of the subcontractors individually purchase the same elements of the system from my multinational. And they wouldn't do it because of people and processes weren't set up to consolidate that. And as part of that, that's where some of the cost overruns happen. So what Matt is sharing is not trivial. And we write about it in our thesis at Building Ventures. We call it constructuring. How do we actually work way up front to design, to coordinate, to consolidate an engineered solution that reduces the materials and labor cost coming out into the field? And Overcast is physically available. It is developed. It is actually executing against that approach. And so going back to your question, what is then rewarding? is then getting to know that solution and then getting to identify other partners in our strategic network where I had seen some of the work that they were doing at another facility. So another, let's say, related multinational that could partner with McKinstry on Overcast and bringing these two parties together. And then also inviting in dialogue from our portfolio companies like Kanoa, Ellie and Fed, former WeWorkers who in the aftermath of WeWork set up Kanoa. How do we make designing and furnishing offices sustainable and circular, right? And so how might a product like Overcast fit into that ecosystem? Seeing how you can connect these parties to not just talk about construction challenges, but actually, execute on a solution. And that's not us. We're just bringing some of the parties together. But that's where I get really excited, Lou, because a lot of us through this period have gone into working and co-working. I think all of your listeners can identify with sitting in a conference room for more than an hour and the air gets stuffy. This is not theoretical, right? The buildings need to be in service of the people. Today, they're not. But there are groups like McKinstry with tangible solutions to save cost and make the building spaces that we work in more enjoyable. And that's rewarding for me, is actually seeing a solution come to market.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. Right. Matt, the final one is for you to share with the audience. What are you most excited about for the future of our space? We've been very positive about what to expect. Obviously, more investment, more technologies, anything that sort of sticks out for you particularly?
Gosh, when I started out, this idea of, if energy efficiency was certainly front of mind in my industry. And then this idea of more sustainable was sort of out there. And I thought it was more of a West Coast US thing but it is. And then you go back to the Midwest or the East Coast of the US. I'm like, what are you talking about? What's the sustainability? Let's get back to building buildings. It has come a long way. So I am excited about this idea that we're not just building more energy efficient buildings, but more sustainable buildings. And we are being asked now in how we design and deliver and construct buildings about what is the embodied carbon, what is the operational carbon. So that is becoming more of the conversation and dialogue early. And I think that's going to take us back to the, some of the crises we're facing around the environment. And it's going to make for, our existing building stock, let alone what we're building. It's not like the population's slowing down. We got a big need to upgrade our existing stock and build new buildings that are more resilient. And I'm excited about that for our industry and all the technology that's going to make that possible at a lower cost point, being much more productive. So that's, I find exciting about it. And, I've only got about another 15 years left before I'm going to hang it up. So I'm excited about it. I think we're going to see more in the next 15 years than I saw in the last 25. That's what I'm excited about.
Amazing. Thank you for that. The embodied carbon, I think, is going to come up a lot on this podcast. I think it was read an article that I think Procore released a carbon calculator tool to basically do that. And I think the calculator is developed by a couple of their customers like Skanska and Sea Change Labs. And
the EC3 tool developed by Stacy Smedley and her team. And that's really, really gaining attention right now.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Just making sure I've got that right. Thank God we got the specials on the podcast. Look, we've got Procore also on season 11. Nearly forgot what season it was, which I'm super excited about. Hopefully those listening in from my audience, you can tell. Honestly, I think I didn't know much about construction, nor was I particularly interested in how buildings are built or anything like that. But since doing research for this podcast, speaking to my guests, I really have. So hopefully, by the end of it, you'll be as intrigued as I am. But look, Gregg, Matt, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the Propcast. You guys are a dream. Let's catch up after the show.
Thank you very much. Nice meeting you.
Outstanding. Thanks, Lou.
Making a high-quality podcast like this one takes a lot of work. That's a fact. But not when you hire a podcast company. With our white glove experience, we handle everything for you. From guest outreach all the way through to publishing and promotion, we handle it all. You show up to hold great interviews and build relationships with your guests, and we take care of everything else. Podcasting is not just about the audience. Every podcast interview is the start of a new relationship. With a weekly podcast, you'd build relationships with 52 ideal partners or prospects through your podcast interviews over the next 12 months. Do you believe that 52 new relationships would help grow your business? We do. Contact Jason at apodcastcompany.com and let's talk.